Also, das wird später aufgelöst. Wir machen aber tatsächlich nahtlos weiter mit Frauenpower. Und zwar mit einer Frau, die tatsächlich sehr viel Power ausstrahlt, die ein unglaubliches Leben hatte bisher. Geboren, aufgewachsen in Somalia. Als sie ein kleines, junges Mädchen war, ist der Vater zu ihr gekommen und hat gesagt, diesen Jungen hier, den wirst du einmal heiraten. Mit 16 sollte sie zwangsverheiratet werden und sie hat gesagt, nein, ich wehre mich dagegen, ich wehre mich gegen das System der Zwangsheirat und sie musste ihr Land verlassen. Sie ist geflohen nach den Niederlanden, wo sie für weltweite Furore, für Schlagzeilen gesorgt hat mit ihrem Kampf für Frauenrechte, gegen Frauendiskriminierung, ganz spezifisch auch gegen die Diskriminierung muslimischer Frauen. Nach Morddrohungen und ganz konkreten Aktionen gegen sie musste sie auch dieses Land wieder verlassen und mittlerweile wohnt sie in den Vereinigten Staaten, wo sie an der Universität lehrt und weiter für sehr viel Gesprächsstoff sorgt mit ihren Büchern, die nicht unumstritten sind, die immer wieder Thesen aufgreifen, die man heftig diskutiert, auch im Westen und natürlich auch in den muslimischen Ländern. Ihr neuestes Buch, Beute, schreibt über die Einwanderung muslimischer Männer nach Europa und warum sie, gemäß ihr, die Frauenrechte auch bei uns im Westen bedrohen. Sie merken, schwere Kost, aber spannende Kost, bereits am frühen Morgen und die Diskussionen sind damit eröffnet. Wir freuen uns sehr, ist sie heute hier in Interlaken. Please give a very warm morning welcome to Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning. Well, first of all, I am honored that you would have me come and address you on the subject of outreach and cooperation. Sadly, my reputation is that I tend to polarize. I disagree with that image of me, but it's hard for me to fight it. I know that in this community, you attach a great deal of importance on connecting with others and collaborating to make the world a better place. Reaching out is not a hollow slogan for you. You're serious about it, and all I can do is express my admiration for it. I've also seen firsthand the great and amazing achievements that can be made through human collaboration, whether that's in politics, economics, science and technology, or all of the above. In fact, it's almost a law of nature. The more human beings work together towards a common objective, the more they achieve. The opposite is also true. The more we undermine each other, each other's desires, each other's goals and communities, the worse off we are. Successful families, successful businesses, successful political parties, successful nations and regions are those that prioritize conflict resolution through dialogue, debate, and build frameworks of consensus. My observation, however, is that lately we don't pay enough attention in the West to genuine differences. We don't pay enough attention to factors that make collaboration difficult or outright impossible. Very often, we preach cooperation instead of practicing it. And I'm not saying that the Swiss Economic Forum is guilty of this oversight. But let me give you a few examples. In 1996, Western leaders persuaded Ukraine to give up her nuclear weapons with the promise of one day becoming a NATO and even an EU member state. All the while, in the name of collaboration, trade, aid, diplomacy, and other soft power tools, NATO and EU leaders were enmeshing their economies with that of Russia. And this continued throughout the period that Putin rose to power, that the phenomenon of Russian oligarchs was emerging, that the human rights abuses, corruption, power grab, and menacing of neighboring countries was going on under Putin's regime. Another example, Brexit. It could have been prevented had EU leaders paid any attention to the needs of the populations of their member states. The democratic deficits, Brussels' overreach, and the emasculating of these populations was debated and dialogued to the max. The leaders of the EU were talking cooperation and consensus, but doing the exact opposite. And this led not only 52% of the British tuning out, but also to, what should I call it, Swiss exit? For decades, the issue of Islam and the strain of immigration from Muslim countries on European social cohesion and the welfare state was discussed, it was studied, reported. The burden of the unintended consequences of that specific immigration falls squarely on the shoulders of the working class. And how the establishment leaders handled this? They disregarded the pain of their people by calling them terrible names like xenophobes and racists. Well, so much for listening. Another example. Western leaders lament about the subjection of Muslim women in their home countries and in immigrant communities in their households. Women who are denied the most basic freedoms suffer, and their own societies hold themselves back economically, socially, and morally by reducing half the population into chattel. The emancipation story of most women in the developing world has yet to begin or is set back on a regular basis. Look at the women of Afghanistan and the promises made to them in the name of collaboration. Watch the promotion of the most idiotic ideology the world has ever seen that insists on pronouns policing, erasing the term woman altogether, and using absurd phrases like people who menstruate, chest feeders, and other garbage. All the while, women's spaces like domestic abuse shelters, women's spots, and even prisons are invaded by men posing as women. To object to these developments is to be used and abused as a turf. The list goes on and on. In the name of collaboration and consensus, Western leaders host tyrants at the World Economic Forum in Davos every year to debate and network. And what exactly do we achieve in these fora? Have we had any honesty on the treatment of the Uyghur population in China, or the nasty zero-COVID policies of the Chinese government? Do we ever hold any of these leaders accountable? Do we have any tools to hold them accountable? There's, of course, a way back. We can find our way back to reconciliation and peace. But that takes courage, it takes honesty, and it takes a great deal to achieve it, a ton of effort. Again, please let me insist that I'm not accusing this community of hypocrisy or bad intentions. Just saying that if we're really serious about addressing the very, very serious problems that we face, from the threat of nuclear war to the breakdown of the nuclear family, we need to be honest about what we can achieve and by what means. I hope I didn't spoil your day. I also hope I left enough time for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ayaan, can I, please, if I can ask you to be in the middle here.
Okay.
You were hoping for questions.
Yes.
I do have some, of course. Let me just pick one or two points out of your speech, out of your thoughts. You were mentioning the war at the moment in the Ukraine. You were mentioning Afghanistan as well. One of the first victims of every war is always the civil society, is the people, and within those people, it's usually the weakest ones, the children, and sadly, women as well.
Yes.
Do you feel the war that we're seeing now has a long effect also on the question of how we treat women?
Absolutely. And I think that we have to be honest with the children of Ukraine, with the women of Ukraine, with the civilians of Ukraine, that we made a terrible mistake and that right now our options are limited. So true leadership, true courage would be to be completely honest, apologize for what happened in the past, and then we have only really three options. We have the option of nuclear war, which we don't want. We have the option of giving the whole of Ukraine to Putin, which we don't want. And so our leaders, the leaders of NATO, would have to find a way of persuading Mr. Putin to climb down and maybe persuading the leadership of Ukraine to give them some concessions for the sake of the women and children of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. One crisis tends to kind of overshadow another.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been so long since we've been talking about the women of Afghanistan and how they suffered. And how with the new regime of Taliban, their rights are going back tens, maybe even longer years. How angry do you get when you hear that, now we're talking about some other country, some other conflict, and we seem to have completely forgotten about what's going on in Afghanistan?
Absolutely, and that is why when you invited me to a forum where we're going to say, let's insist on collaboration and cooperation, I think, okay, what is then, where do we draw a red line? Can we really say we collaborated and cooperated with the Taliban? The Taliban have, in fact, year after year, made it very clear what their evil intentions are. And so if you really care about the women of Afghanistan, if you really care about human rights, you have to say, we'll collaborate, we'll talk, we'll do everything we can, but there has to be a red line. And we have to be able, when we draw that red line, to actually impose it.
Mm-hmm. Let's speak about Europe and your new book, Pray, which says quite clearly that immigration of Muslim men lead to problems, first of all, to problems for women, and it undermines women's rights in the West. I read the book, and I must say it's quite drastic, because I think it's just black or white, and it's just, that's the way it is. When we talk about reaching out, isn't that an oversimplification of things? Aren't you alienating a whole community by saying it's the way it is, and it's a danger for the West?
Am I allowed to call you on stage?
Of course.
My book is not black and white. my book, if you really listen and you study it and you see it, it says, as the continent of Europe and her leaders, we understand that people in countries that are in trouble want to come here, that many of them are men, that we understand from history that young men tend to be violent and tend to cause crimes when they have no sense of purpose, that we understand that in Muslim-majority countries, men treat women differently from Europe and badly from Europe. My book says we're now seeing this phenomenon where these men are coming in large numbers and it's having an impact on the population. We should be having these conversations. We should be saying, yes, we can welcome you, but we have a capacity issue. And not only that, we also have laws, we have norms, and we have values, and that's our red line. If you trespass, if you transgress on these red lines, you're going back. But we are never honest. And that's the problem. We talk about collaboration and getting along, but we never want to deal with the consequences of the people who refuse to get along.
However, is it a Muslim-specific issue? Aren't you giving other men a free pass by just saying, okay, this is an issue concerning immigrants?
No, I'm accusing European societies and Western societies of giving Muslim men a free pass. Mm-hmm. If you assault a woman, your family is going to make sure that they condemn your behavior. The victim's family is going to make sure that your behavior is condemned, and the entire society of Switzerland will condemn your behavior. But if it is an immigrant, if it's a Muslim man, we make excuses for them, and we say, well, you know, poor them, their culture, they don't understand, he went through a war, and so on and so forth. If you read my book, you're going to see case after case in different European countries where at times an individual who has assaulted a woman, raped her, and destroyed her entire life is sentenced to something like community service for 2 weeks. And that kind of leniency is not given to the locals because the local white men are assumed to be held accountable and to be responsible. So what I'm asking is, if you want collaboration to really work, it has to be universal. You have to apply it to everyone. So there have to be consequences for everyone.
So the real problem is with the law?
The real problem is with talking about collaboration, but not practicing it.
We already... Go ahead.
Thank you.
As one can imagine, it is a topic that is discussed heavily, that is discussed sometimes quite in a heated atmosphere. You get most of that, of course, as well. You get applause as well from maybe from sides you wouldn't really want to get applause from. Is there a risk that you're being applauded by, let's say, the far right, for example, for saying something that they might just turn around or turn the words in your mouth, and being hailed by the wrong people? Isn't that a risk?
Are you extreme right-wing people here? You just applauded me.
Probably not the ones here, but
yeah.
you have...
But they just applauded, and I think the applause that I get often has to do with me saying the things that a lot of people think, and that a lot of people say behind closed doors, but they don't dare say it in public. Mm-hmm. And over the years, I have learned that a lot of people we dismiss as far right and extreme right-wing are actually not extreme right-wing. They are people who are expressing the exact same sentiments that you are expressing, that there is a cultural heritage that you have in Europe and that you want to safeguard, that you want to protect the rights of women and children, that you want your society to be welcoming, but at the same time, that you want the norms and values of your society to be respected. If that makes you an extreme right-wing, then you are an extreme right-wing, and if that makes you applaud me, then that's fine. But I thought, in a setting like this one, where you say, we have all these problems, let's go back to the table, let's really start talking and listening and collaborating, then the first step is to listen, not to accuse.
Uh-huh. What I find striking, you are a woman, you are black, you are fighting for women's rights. You have experienced firsthand a patriarch society. You have been chased away from that society in a way. However, yet, you are being accused and attacked mostly by the liberals. How dazzling is that for you?
So first, when I clapped my hands like this, it's because you said you are a woman. And I thought, goodness, in Switzerland, at least they have common sense.
Oh, let's not enter the gender debate. That's way out of our time limit.
I am a woman. And you are a man.
Let's get this straight and all right. This being out of the way, let's go to the question.
But I think to go to the question, it is when you say liberals, I don't know if the individuals who call themselves liberals really understand what the term means. I think it's a lot of people who feel for various psychological and social reasons that they have to make excuses for minorities. And they see me as a provocateur, as somebody who is trying to provoke the minorities. But here's the funny thing. I have now, today, more Muslim friends than I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And these are Muslim men and women. They're from the Middle East. They're from South Asia. They're born and raised in America. They're from all over the world. I have more real Somali friends than I ever had. And we laugh at these individuals who try and, excuse bad behavior in the name of minority rights.
Ayaan, me being a man, I'm not good in multitasking, meaning I left my iPad on the chair. I'm sure we have questions from the audience, and if I can call someone maybe to give me the questions also over the ear.
That's what you need.
That's what I need a woman for. Fantastic. Caroline. We see where the strength of everyone is here on stage. Thank you so much for this. Now, if I may be able to open it. Until that, let me just ask you, you once said, I'm not angry.
Yes.
I'm just stating the facts. Knowing your life and what you went through and what you have been fighting against, how do you manage not to get angry? And how do you keep that anger under control, maybe?
Well, I get angry. Of course, I'm human. I get angry. I get very angry at some of the injustices I see. But I think the main question, and here we're talking about leadership, we're talking about young people being introduced into leadership positions, is what do you do with that anger? And in my case, I think I've made a choice. I'm going to use the force and the energy of that anger to call out the people who are cowardly and who are hypocritical. Let's collaborate, let's talk, let's have consensus. And meanwhile, they're denigrating other people. Mm-hmm. They're calling their populations deplorable. They're saying there's no difference between men and women. They're saying that the United States is systemically and structurally racist. And I use that energy to call them out and say, well, show me the evidence. And what I achieve when I do that is they get angry, and that's very satisfying.
Thank you very much. Let's take some of the questions. I've been able to open. A heavily discussed topic, banning veils, banning headscarves. What do you think of policies regarding the ban, which is a discussion in many countries?
Yes, I have to say to you, I think banning, I'm a classical liberal, and I take it very, very seriously that you don't ban as easily and as quickly as you want to ban things. What does the headscarf stand for? It symbolizes that in the relationship between men and women are responsible not only for their own sexuality, but also that of men. That's the debate I would like you to have. And if you have it openly and these women understand that men are responsible for their own actions, the headscarf will come off on its own rather than ban it. And so instead of the banning, I would rather that we refocused on the talking, the debating, the real dialogue, and protect then the platform. where the dialogue is happening. Protect the people who are threatened because they're being honest.
There you go.
You're not extreme right-wing.
Let's take one more. About the role of women in conflicts. There are one or two questions about that. When do world leaders realize that maybe you should have one or two, or probably more, women at a negotiating table?
Yeah.
To have different kinds of also visions, and how should that be implemented, and how can that be
I think
achieved?
it should be implemented that you demand, that you require of women leaders, female leaders, the same meritocracy, the same meritocratic qualifications that you require of men. So if you just haul a woman and say, okay, because of identity politics or because I want to meet my quota, you are sitting at the table to negotiate, I think all you do is you just entrench the existing prejudices. I'm thinking of a very specific woman at this moment. If you ditch that and you say, okay, we are all qualified, equally qualified, men and women, and with that being perfectly equal, then we choose to have more women because we want equality before the law, we want diversity, we also want to hear the perspective of women, then I think that's honorable. But doing it along the lines of identity politics is very dangerous, and it only sets women back.
Ayaan, you gave us a lot to think about, and I hope, and I'm sure, a lot to discuss about. Thank you so much for visiting us this morning. Ayaan Hirsi. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, this way, yeah. Thank you.